Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. I feel very small. I feel in a seat or a chair. So my name is Richenda and I'm a community dietitian. I work for Portsmouth hospitals and I'm community-based. So I've come to talk about diet and obviously osteoporosis today. So what I'm going to look at are the measures to help reduce your risk of osteoporosis. Obviously, I appreciate lots of you have already got osteoporosis. But looking at ways to try and maintain your bone mineral density once you've been diagnosed. So the key things we're looking at are obviously calcium, vitamin D, and the other micronutrients which affect the absorption of calcium and have an effect on the bones. And also looking at body weight as the other factor which we associate with diet that can affect your bone mineral density. So obviously to start off with calcium, I'm sure you've had a lot of information about bones and how the calcium affects the bones, but your bones are made of collagen fibres that are filled with calcium, and it's an important mineral that we use to keep your bones nice and strong and to prevent your bones thinning. So from our mid-30s onwards, our bone mineral density starts to drop, and this drop is more prominent for women postmenopausal as well. And we know that if we have an adequate calcium intake and bone-friendly diet, along with some lifestyle measures, we can reduce the rate of the thinning of our bones, which is really important, all right? So how much calcium do we actually need? The general population needs about 700 milligrams a day. And most of us should be able to get this through a varied, healthy, balanced diet. There are higher requirements for teenage girls and boys. There is a slight blip for those teenage years. The requirement is slightly higher. And for people with diagnosed osteoporosis, we're looking at 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day. And we'll look at how to get that calcium intake. And it's probably likely that if you have diagnosed osteoporosis, you will be on a calcium supplement to achieve the calcium that you need, because it's quite difficult to get that amount through the diet alone. So these just give you an idea of where you get your calcium from. So to get you 700 milligrams a day, so this is a general population, we need 3 to 4 portions of calcium-rich food a day, okay? So dairy-wise is your best source of calcium, but looking at if you need the 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams, you're looking at 5 to 6 portions a day of dairy food. And as you can imagine, that's quite difficult to achieve for most of us. Even of those of us that really like drinking milk and everything, it's very difficult to get that through the diet alone. So just to give you an idea of what a portion is, so a third of a pint of milk is an average portion. So if you're having some milk on your cereal, milk in your tea and your coffee, you're probably getting a portion or maybe 2 if you do that. So that's why cereal is a good way to start the day, because if you have cereal plus milky drinks, you're getting a good couple of portions in straight away, okay? Other good sources, dairy-wise, obviously your cheese, but of course many of us are cautious about having too much cheese because of the fat content, cholesterol problems, okay? Cottage cheese is some of us love it, most of us hate it, but low-fat cottage cheese is a brilliant way to get your calcium in, and you can have quite a big portion to class as to get enough calcium in. So you're looking at a good 2/3 of a pot of cottage cheese would class as a portion. Your cream cheese, and again you can get the low-fat versions, fromage frais, rice pudding, custards. These are all your good dairy sources with your calcium in. There are non-dairy sources of calcium, okay? So a portion would be half a can of sardines, so the little ones. As long as you eat the bones, mash them all in, okay? The same with the pilchards. So as long as you eat the bones, because obviously that's where the calcium is. So they're brilliant sources, but most of us aren't eating sardines and pilchards every day. It might be something we have once a week. So they are really good sources, but you can only eat so much of them. Tofu, do any of you eat tofu? Heard of it, tried it? Okay, yeah, brilliant. It's becoming more widely available, and it's a brilliant source of calcium. it's saying here you only need 2 ounces to class as a portion. Well, that would be very small. Realistically, you're having 2 or 3 times that portion if you're eating tofu. So particularly those that are on a dairy-free diet, tofu is a really good way to get the calcium into your diet. It doesn't taste of much really, so you need to be a bit adventurous with your flavours in cooking, but it is a really good way, and most supermarkets will sell it now, okay? Your green leafy veg, like spinach and broccoli, you do need quite a big portion to count as a suitable calcium intake, but the options are there. And we know that calcium is quite well absorbed from the dairy portions, the green leafy veg. So even though we need quite a lot of it, the calcium is absorbed quite well in the body. 3 slices of bread, particularly the 50-50 best of both, they've got added calcium in. So they're really good ways to get extra calcium in the diet. So it's particularly for the kids that perhaps don't drink a lot of milk or take dairy produce, or teenagers that, again, they tend to go off milky things or go off cereal, then the best of both, those breads are really good. They've got extra calcium in, so that's worth bearing in mind if someone does need extra calcium in the diet. Things like your chickpeas, kidney beans, your beans and lentils, again, they're really good non-dairy sources of calcium in the diet. Figs, okay, again, it's not something people eat on a daily basis. Apricots, but you need quite a lot. You might be a bit running to the toilet after eating 32 dried apricots every day. Brazil nuts, yeah, that's quite a big portion. Almonds, yeah. You can see where we're going with all the dried fruit and the nuts and the seeds. They are calcium sources, but you need a lot of them to achieve an adequate calcium dosage effect from it. Tahini is probably, I don't know whether any of you use tahini or things like that. That's found in hummus and some sort of Middle East cooking. Again, that's a very good concentrated source of calcium. And if you're on a dairy-free diet, that might be worth looking at. Even as to sell it now, so it's definitely becoming more widely available. Okay. So, if you are on a dairy-free diet or choosing not to have dairy as your main source of milk and yogurt, then you just need to check that the dairy-free milks you're buying have actually got calcium in them. Because obviously, naturally, rice and oat milks will not have calcium in them. So when you buy them, they add the calcium to it, okay? So soya milks and things like that. We have got some samples over here, and we have just been checking that some of them don't have calcium in still. So that's worth bearing in mind. If you think you're being really good and having lots of soya milk, make sure there's calcium in it, otherwise you're really not helping yourself. But you can see that the levels are comparable to cow's milk. So just double check that what you're having has got enough calcium in it. So how can we get calcium into the diet? You know, it's probably the biggest dietary measure you can do for your bone health is having enough calcium in the diet. So cereal with milk for breakfast, cheese, adding it in sandwiches and crackers, jacket potatoes, tin sardines, mash the bones in, eat them up. Your dark green leafy vegetables, make that as a regular part of your diet. Beans, lentils, tofu, I've said, is a really concentrated source of calcium, so it's a really good thing to try. If you haven't tried it, maybe it's worth getting some to have a go. Milky drinks, and of course snacking on things like nuts and dried fruit. Not necessarily 32 dried apricots, but having a bit of dried apricots and a couple of nuts. You know, just having little bits throughout the day on a regular basis can be really good to help top your calcium levels up. So on to vitamin D. We need vitamin D to help strengthen our bones. The calcium without vitamin D is not going to be doing much good for us. And some of you who may have had vitamin D tests in the past and actually found out you're deficient, and lots of people are deficient in vitamin D without realising. So why are people deficient? It's because the main source of vitamin D to our bodies is from the sunlight. So we need to have our face and our arms exposed to the sun in the summer months for at least 15 minutes really every day to try and get enough storage and the body makes the vitamin D and stores it to last us throughout the winter months. So it's really important we do get enough sunlight. Lots of people don't get this sunlight on their skin. Maybe it's too cold. England, it's really cold, raining, height of summer. We've all got our cardies and raincoats on. So, often we just, it's not sunny enough to expose our skin. Lots of children are vulnerable now because they're all wearing factor 50 because we don't want to get sunburnt. So the glimmer of sun, and people put sun factor on, obviously stopping the sunlight on the skin. It's just too much of a barrier. People with darker skin need more exposure. I'm all right because I've got nice fair skin, so I'm good for vitamin D. Obviously, lots of ladies from ethnic groups keep themselves covered up. Another reason they might be more deficient. And so we know that often as you get older, it's harder for your body to synthesize your vitamin D, even if you are getting that exposure. So we know that people that certain groups in the community definitely need a supplement of vitamin D, all right, but I'll come on to that in a second. But osteomalacia is soft bones, and that's caused by a vitamin D deficiency. And rickets is actually making a comeback. You might have heard it in the news. We all thought rickets had died out, but actually, again, because of children with darker skin or lots of sun factor, actually rickets is making a comeback. So we need to be sun safe, but we need to be sun aware that we need a bit of vitamin D for our bone health as well. So a small amount of vitamin D we can get from our foods, and it's important to have these foods regularly in the diet. So breakfast cereals will be fortified with vitamin D, eggs, your oily fish again, so sardines are good for your calcium and they're good for vitamin D as well, and mushrooms, and there are some other foods. But realistically, you need to eat quite a lot of eggs and cereals and things like that to get the adequate vitamin D in the diet. So realistically, although we do encourage people to have some, most people would probably benefit if you're deficient or in a certain population to have a supplement. So generally, the Department of Health would say anyone over the age of 65 needs a vitamin D supplement. If you want a calcium supplement anyway, you probably find that that's added into your calcium anyway. But a general vitamin and mineral supplement will have vitamin D in it. So that's just bearing in mind. Cod liver oil does have vitamin D in it. So it could be that you're having some in various supplements anyway. Pregnant ladies, breastfeeding mums do need to have a supplement as well. So if you're age over 65 and you're not on a calcium supplement, you do at least need a vitamin D supplement. So bear that in mind, okay? Right. So, as I say, these are the supplementations are for certain food client groups. As I say, if you are diagnosed with osteoporosis, you're likely to be on a combined calcium and vitamin D supplement anyway, okay? So what we should be doing is taking our calcium with food to maximise the absorption and in 2 separate doses. So if you're on 2 tablets a day, try to take them at 2 different times of the day, okay, if you can, to maximise their absorption. And just because you're on supplements doesn't mean you don't need to eat dairy food. You still need to get calcium from the diet as well. We need to get it from both angles. So just to look at the factors that affect the action of calcium and vitamin D, because we want to maximise their action on our bones. So protein in the diet, it's important that we have enough protein, okay? Because it keeps us strong, prevents falls, and helps us heal, it keeps us strong really. But too much protein can be a problem because of the uric acid content. So the recommendations are that we still eat meat and we still eat protein foods and we have them twice a day, just being mindful of what a portion is. If you're on a massive steak like this, that's not a portion, that's a mega portion. So a portion generally is what you can put on your hand. So meat would be about just over the palm of your hand would be a portion of meat. Your beans and lentils would be a good half a tin, a couple of eggs, a handful of nuts and seeds. So the portions aren't really big, but it's important to maintain those 2 portions of protein foods a day. And meats and red meats are good because they have also got folic acid and iron and other nutrients in. So, you know, if you eat meat, don't exclude red meats totally from the diet. I know they have got a bit of a bad press recently, but it's important to include them in the diet regularly, okay? The benefits of having pulses, nuts and seeds and tofu as your protein is that you're also getting the calcium with it as well, so they're sort of a double good protein for you. So just to summarise the portions really. So things like peanut butter, people don't think of that as being a protein source, but that's something you can have on your toast if you don't like dairy food and having cereal and things like that. But you can see that the portions aren't massive, okay? So hopefully most of you will be able to achieve your 2 protein portions each day. So vitamin K, we know that if people have an adequate level of vitamin K in the body, their bone mineral density is higher and there's a reduced fracture incidence. And again, we're back to our green leafy vegetables. So we do want to have a regular intake of this. Realistically, deficiency is fairly rare, so even if you're not eating kale every day, you know, you're unlikely to be deficient. So, but if you can up your intake of green leafy veg, it's good for a number of health reasons, for your cancer risk and heart disease risk as well. So we are meant to be eating leafy vegetables. They are meant to be really good for us. So try and have them on a regular basis, okay? Okay, so vitamin A, we don't want too much of. So vitamin A, we know pregnant ladies always have to avoid it, but you don't want to be having too much if you're osteoporosis risk as well, okay? So, I don't know whether you all eat liver regularly. Liver's brilliant because it's got a bit of vitamin D in it and it's good protein and iron, but we shouldn't be having it more than once a week. So that includes normal liver and onions, liver pate. So just be careful not to have too much. Just be mindful that your cod liver oil will have vitamin A in it too. So just be careful, all right? So if you're having lots of liver, you probably don't need a cod liver oil because you'll probably be having too much vitamin A in the diet. Okay. Salt. I'm sure we all know that salt's no good for us, okay? It puts your blood pressure up and your body loses calcium to compensate for that. And we don't want to be losing our calcium. So don't put salt on your foods. Try and avoid too many processed ready meals because that's where your most concentrated source of sodium will be. High potassium foods we know can help reduce your blood pressure, and that's back to fruit and vegetables as part of a healthy balanced diet. So we should be having less than 6 grams of salt or 2.4 grams of sodium a day, so it depends what the food labels say. They should have both on there now, so you should be able to check your foods and make sure you're not having too much salt in the diet. Alcohol. I know Colin was talking about alcohol earlier, so I'll just run over this really. We know that too much alcohol above the recommended limits is a risk factor for osteoporosis. It reduces your bone mineral density, so your bones are getting weaker. You've got increased risk of falling, well, that's because you've had too much and you're not quite steady on your feet. I guess that's the reason. So particularly postmenopausal women have an increased risk. So the alcohol guidelines are 2 to 3 units a day. In the old days, you could save it all up and have a good binge at the weekend, but we're not allowed to do that anymore. You have to have a daily maximum limit if you are going to drink alcohol. So just be careful of that, all right? We also know that very high caffeine intakes can be an issue, particularly coffee's got a higher caffeine content than your tea has. But can you just switch to decaf? We don't want to be cutting your teas and coffees out because that's a good source of milk for lots of people. That's the only time they have milk is in their teas and coffee. But maybe switching to a decaf can be a positive effect. Okay, so that's quite an easy change to make. And the taste differences, people don't know the difference now. All right. And I'm sure, again, Colin said earlier about your fizzy drinks. Steer clear of the fizzy drinks. They're going to affect your bone mineral density again, all right? And again, if you're drinking fizzy drinks, you're not drinking your calcium-rich milky drinks, whether that be tea with milk and coffee with milk or a milky drink or hot chocolate with milk. So we know that's a key thing to avoid. And again, for teenagers who are building up their bone and mineral density, it's a key time that they should drink a lot of fizzy drinks at this age group. And they're the ones we want to try and sort of steer clear of the fizzies because we know it's affecting their bone health. And lastly, just to touch on the body weight really, hurrah, there is a positive factor to being a bit overweight. It's probably the only medical condition where being overweight is good. So we know that carrying a bit of weight reduces your risk of osteoporosis and obviously gives you a bit of cushioning if you do fall and helps reduce your fracture risk. So aim to be healthy, but towards the higher end of healthy. We're not talking about being obese, but being underweight we know is definitely a risk factor. So yeah, you don't necessarily need to go for the low-fat dairy. Go for a bit of cheese and full-fat milk and put a few pounds on if you need to, because there's a benefit from carrying just that little bit of extra weight. So to summarise really, what we're looking at is a range of healthy foods which have all got positive benefits, and they all interact together and link together to give us a good, healthy, balanced diet. But remember to include the dairy food, the fish with bones, the beans and lentils, your fruit and veg. They're the key things that are going to help your bones in a positive way to make them strong and keep them strong. And this picture is downloadable from the Public Health England and Department of Health website if you wanted to have your own picture on the fridge to remind you that you need lots of fruit and veg and a good balance of food. All right. Okay, that's me done. Okay, any questions?